This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Hey everybody, this episode of the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Sign up now at FanDuel.com/Boston and claim your $200 bonus. Look what we have here. We have making his return. I think it's maybe 1 year since he was also in a hotel room at that time in Europe, I think. But Kevin Field, the resident BSJ draft guru, is here to, we are on the eve of the NFL draft. This kind of snuck up on me. Of course, some people who listen to my earlier podcasts and follow me on Twitter and at BSJ know that I had a little medical thing that went on this weekend and really delayed me. But I'm slowly catching back up, and Kevin's here to help fill in the gaps as we talk about the important things with the Patriots in this draft. Not a bunch of stuff that you hear on sports talk radio about, oh, Will Levis, they're going to trade Mac Jones and they're going to get Will Levis at 2. Like, let's be real here. And we will discuss that in a second. But Kevin, welcome. Thanks for doing this, buddy. Appreciate you. And let me just say, I'm sure there are a lot of people at BSJ who are like, Bedard, when are you going to write about the draft? When are you going to do this? Look, if I felt the need or that we were lacking something, I would do it more. I just think Kevin does a great job. And, this is a hobby for him. It's a passionate hobby for him. But I think he's really freaking good. And a lot of what he writes, and I think you'll also hear in some of our comments on some of the prospects that we talk about, we see things the same way, and he sees things the way the Patriots see him. I think he's highly accurate. I think he was really good last year. And so, if I thought he was slacking or not doing a good job, I would step up a little bit more. But we're not redundant at BSJ, and I don't like wasting my time watching a bunch of nothing draft prospects. So Kevin is your guy, and so Kevin is here. Kevin, thanks for joining us. Thanks, bud.
Thanks for having me back, Greg. It's a pleasure to be back, and I'm glad that you're feeling better, and I'm looking forward to diving in the conversation and the draft that we've been building towards for some time.
Yeah. So just to give people a quick overview, we're going to talk a little bit about the Levis stuff, sort of in the context of where Kevin sees him in terms of the quarterbacks and what might appeal to the Patriots. We will get into a lot of the need positions on offense. We'll talk a little bit about the cornerbacks. Just to let people know, I've watched at least some film of the top tackle prospects, the top tight ends, the top wide receivers. I will get to some of the defense. I know a little bit about the cornerbacks. I've seen a little bit of them, at least the top guys. I certainly know who I prefer. So we'll get into that stuff, but we just want to sort of give you a quickie sort of helper before the draft gets going. Tonight on BSJ, I'll give you some thoughts, some expanded thoughts on the offensive people. Tomorrow during the day, I'll drop the defensive people, and then we'll be off and running with the draft. So, Kevin, let's start with just the Will Levis conversation. Okay, of course, the Patriots brought him in as a top 30 visit, which doesn't mean anything. It could mean something. It could be nothing. It could be a smokescreen. It could be anything. Those things happen. There's not, just because he visits the Patriots doesn't mean anything. Just so people understand that. Sure, those spots are valuable, but a lot of times these visits are just to fill in gaps of information as far as stuff that they need to know, the internal makeup of the guy or injury or whatever. And a lot of times it's spent on underclassmen who seniors they have a lot more information on. They can talk to at all-star games. They can't talk to the underclassmen, just combine and the lead up to the draft. So that in and of itself is not a big deal. That he came in for a top 30 visit. I mean, they've spent time with Trevor Lawrence over the years, and of course Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. This is not unusual. But Kevin, so I guess sort of tell us where you slot Levis in terms of these quarterbacks in this draft, and are there things there that you think would appeal to the Patriots?
Sure. So he's definitely in the top four. I think that no question about that. There's every single one of these guys has potholes. All of them have significant things going in their favor. I think arguably the first five guys from a quarterback perspective, which would be Young, Stroud, Levis, Richardson, and then even Hooker, are better than what was in the first round last year, which was Kenny Pickett. So from a quarterback perspective, it's a good class at the top, but it's a class that's like challenging to pick on because they could all be busts or they could all have challenges, I think, transferring to the league. And so really tricky as far as if you're betting your stake on one of these quarterbacks. The notes I have on Will Levis, there are some things to like for sure. He's got a huge arm. He did a great job on the S2, which is essentially the revised version of the Wonderlic, which is more commonly known, but a lot of the scouting community has adapted to it. So really smart guy, cognitively processes things fast, has all the tools you're going to look for in a quarterback, right? He's got size, arm strength to make every throw. He's got the legs to extend plays. He's a big, tough kid. And so he's absolutely going to be a first round draft pick. He also came from a pro style offense. Actually played for last year for Liam Cohen, who was formerly a UMass quarterback. And since this is Boston Sports Journal, it's probably worth calling out. Will was born in Newton and is a Hockenbach. Originally grew up in North Attleboro before he played his high school football in Connecticut and then went to Penn State. Well spoken about within the program. He did face a lot of pressure this year, and their team wasn't as good up front, and so his pressure numbers were like exceedingly high. He played injured, and so there's some things that while he didn't look as good this year, there's some reasons why he didn't look as good. If that's what you're going on, you want to bank it, and you want to explain why he didn't have as good of a year. There's reasons to feel that way. Right. On the other side of the coin, he's going to be 24. So that same knock that you got on Hendon Hooker is going to be 25. Yep. Will Levis is going to be 24 next year. He doesn't always light it up. He's had his share of inconsistencies, ball placement. Well, he's got a great arm. He doesn't always dial back that with touch. And the thing that I am probably most concerned about with Will is like the negative plays, right? Lots of picks, lots of sacks. And those are two things that the Patriots knows, right? Is protect the football, live to the next down. It's not the worst thing if you have to punt the ball, right? And so he's got a little bit of that, trusting the arm, willing to force it in there. And so, he's a good prospect. I don't believe these rumors. I'd be shocked, maybe is probably the better way to put it. Patriots have traditionally gone for rhythm quarterbacks, quarterbacks that are going to need good play calling, but can deliver the ball. Will Levis is a little bit more in that, somewhere between at the upside. If you want to pick him high, it's because maybe he could be Josh Allen, but he could easily be Carson Wentz, right? And those are guys that, rely on raw ability, have great arms, but have challenges at moments too, because it's not just about the raw ability.
I mean, there is also, in my opinion, with quarterbacks, and this is why I don't watch too much film on them, it's really about what you don't see with quarterbacks. The work ethic, the leadership, the, how do they command a huddle? Are they grinding the film? Like, it's all that stuff that Tom Brady was not a great, we all know, he didn't have the greatest physical skills in the world. What made him great was just his competitiveness and, off the charts intangibles. And so, I think that's, I don't care, a guy could look like, I don't even know. I mean, they could look like the greatest prospect in the world on film and just do these things that bend your mind as far as how they throw a football or how they run. But I mean, well, look at Jeff George. I mean, Jeff George could throw a ball through a brick wall, but he was an awful leader and an awful person, and he was never a good quarterback, even though he had the talent. And so, when I look at Levis, and I don't know him, I haven't looked into him very much, but I just, I see the social media stuff. I see him standing in front of a mirror. There's a lot of talk about him being too rocked up, too bulked up for the combine. How many quarterbacks look like that? Not many. How many Patriots quarterbacks look like that? Like zero. I mean, look at Tom Brady, look at Mac Jones. And then look at Levis, like the selfie king. Like, no, like he doesn't fit. So unless, Bill Belichick's gotten a lobotomy or something like that, or somebody else is definitely taking the picks, I have a hard time seeing it. If I'm the Patriots, I would much rather try it with Anthony Richardson than Will Levis. I would rather sit him for the next 2 years, give him to Billy O'Brien, say you train him, break him down, build him back up, because, we've seen that limited passers, whether it's, Jalen Mills or not Jalen Mills, Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen or, whoever, these guys who you look at their stats or they're throwing and you're like, oh man, they're really inconsistent. But you can scheme around that and make them, but they're just good ball players and just, freaks of nature athletically. And I think that I would much rather, with Mac Jones, with 2 years left on his rookie deal, I would much rather invest in Anthony Richardson, perhaps a little bit lower without having to trade up, and developing him and possibly paying off big time, bigger than Will Levis, than going with Will Levis. But, we'll see. So I agree with Kevin. I think we're on the same page. This would shock me. This smells like a smokescreen to me. This smells like Bill Belichick was looking at it and being like, we got 3 more top 30 visits left. Like, let's bring Levis in, just to throw everybody for a loop and keep the spurs on Mac Jones so that he knows, like, he's got to keep going and stuff like that. So I don't think it's real, but who knows? We've been surprised before. Let's get into some of the prospects real quick. Let's start with, we'll go sort of in order of need in our opinions. So I think both of us, looking at the long-term prospects of this team or even the short-term, offensive tackle to me is an enormous need. I think Kevin and I sort of see that the right way. And so, I took a spin through the top offensive tackle prospects, and, here are sort of my ratings right now, in terms of what I saw. First of all, I will say guys like Jalen Duncan and Blake Freeland, who I've heard some talk about, and while there's certain upside there, those guys are major projects to me, and I'm not interested in them. I'm not interested in another Yadni Kajust or anything like that. So they're way down the list. But to me, in my mind, Paris Johnson is clearly the best tackle prospect in this draft. I think that while he's got a ways to go in terms of strength and some technique stuff, like it's all there. The feet are all there. The length is all there. The outline of a franchise, even left tackle. I mean, right tackle's fine. Could be a franchise left tackle if he just gets in and gets a little bit stronger. To me, he's clearly the guy with the most upside, and I also think he has low bust potential. He'd at least be a good, solid right tackle in this league. And so, Kevin, what do you think about Paris Johnson being number 1 on my list?
Yeah, I think for me, it's if we're talking true tackles, I would say I have Broderick Jones, but I will say that Paris Johnson isn't going to bust, right? And he's probably the safest true tackle. And you referenced Duncan and you referenced Freeland. Like, those are guys that are second, third round, maybe even 4th round guys that are project, right? And that's why you hired Adrian Clem, right? Is if you're going to think about those guys. But if you're looking for an immediate contributor next year, which this team does need, they need a plan. You want to protect your quarterback, ideally on the blind side. We can talk about weapons, but you need to keep him upright and make sure that he's back there in the pocket and he's going to trust that he's not going to get hit all the time. I think a left tackle is incredibly important. And Paris Johnson, not only does he look like he's built in the lab, he's the cleanest off the field as well. And that's some of the challenge with some of these other tackle prospects, is they're just kind of a mix of either projection, why haven't they been as good in the past, play experience. And so Paris needs that strength, but he's a pretty safe pick. So you got to feel good about that. physical stature.
So Broderick Jones, he came in number 3 on my list. I definitely see why you might have had him number 1. I will say, just to get to these guys real quick. So I had Darnell Wright number 2. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about how inconsistent he is, about how great his film was against Will Anderson from Alabama. I was just, and of course I didn't watch his whole season and I don't get into all that stuff, but just in terms of, ceiling and what he can be, especially if you can motivate him, I just think Darnell Wright he's a really good prospect. He's just not as safe as Paris Johnson. I don't think he's ever going to be a left tackle. He could get away there. I think he's more of just a very high ceiling at right tackle. The phrase that came to mind watching him is he's a sticky blocker. Like, he gets on you and, you're done. Of course, there are a lot of motor concerns about why he's not great all the time. And Broderick Jones, I also have a first-round grade on him. Great athlete, looks the part, just needs a lot of he needs a lot of work as far as technique. For me, he would be a right tackle for at least a year or two before you might consider left tackle, or he could also be a guard. But certainly, the athletic profile is all there. What do you think of those two guys?
Yeah, I think Wright's got a ton of experience, which was great, but on both the left and the right, he's much better on the right side. He was dramatically better this year, and he deserves a ton of credit for that. Doesn't have the best body, but good enough for the right side. Good enough feet. Was effective at the Senior Bowl. Probably the best tackle, but I wouldn't say he lit it up or was completely dominating. But he's a guy that's a first rounder. You can feel good about him playing next year, at the right tackle spot. Broderick Jones, I think he's got the highest upside of the 3, but he's got some bust potential too. And that's, I think, one of the things to call out. He's got really long arms. He's really effective in the run game, accurate when he's blocking on the move, physical, can fill out his frame. He needs technique work, right? And this is, I come back to Adrian Clem coming in, getting paid a lot of money. This is where he would certainly earn his paycheck. I do think the analysis that you said of the starting at the right, moving to left is probably accurate as well. But he did play, it was his first full season starting in the SEC. And what I would say is he didn't give up a sack. I think he had 6 pressures playing against some of the best pass rushers in the country and stuff like that. So I do think he's a good player that you could feel confident in. But if you summarized it, I'd say the highest ceiling for me is Broderick Jones. The highest floor is Paris Johnson.
Okay. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official partner of Major League Baseball. And newcomers en masse can get on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston. Finally, you can bet on all your favorite sports, from the money line to point spreads to player props and more. And guess what? You can do it anywhere. The bed, your car, the bathroom, if you find yourself there. Their app is awesome. Trust me, I use it all the time. So bet now on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. It is. Don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. So there's one other guy that I had that I would be okay with in the first round. I'm sorry, DeJuan Jones. No. I'm not doing Trent Brown in the first round. Matt Bergeron, I was not impressed with. I think he looks like more of a guard. I know he's, nasty, and he could be a really good guard. Could probably play right tackle. He's fine. Carter Warren from Pittsburgh. Nothing flashy about him. Good, solid player. I think a low bust potential on him. The guy out of this group, outside of Paris Johnson, when I watched his film, and I was like, holy crap. It was Anton Harrison from Oklahoma. I mean, he's 21, but he does not play like that young of a kid at all. If I had to guess just from his film, I would have been like, this kid's 24. 25. I was just very, he's not elite in any way, but I was just really impressed with him.
Yeah, he's a good player. He put and he might go in the first round. I didn't have him up at that top tier, just because he's not as physical in the run game. Which is, hey, if you're gonna take a left tackle, you might be okay with that, right? If they got great feet, they can mirror, they can protect the blind side, etc. So, good prospect. Has actually played 11,000 snaps. The Big 12 doesn't have the pass rushers
Yep.
that the conferences have, and so one of the things we always talk about, Greg, is good on good, right?
Yep.
And so, I would say, like, the best pass rusher in the Big 12, they just don't have the depth that the other conferences have.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. And by the way, the Bruins are back on and they're still trailing. But I agree. And anytime I see Oklahoma, I'm just like, it's not like he's ever going to get in a 3-point stance or anything. And it's just such a dichotomy between what the Patriots do and what the college people do. Let's move over to the tight ends. And let me just say this in general about the tight ends and the wide receivers. I love the tight ends. And I think I listed 3, 6, 8 guys through the second or third round. And then I just got tired. I probably could have kept going, from the talk about this class, but I completely agree that. And you compare that to the wide receiver class, Kevin, between you and I and our podcast listeners, I hated the wide receiver class. I really did. I don't want to, if I'm the Patriots, unless JSN or Zay Flowers, falls to me at some point and I trade down, I'm not doing, and maybe that's why they signed Juju and why they signed Gesicki and they have other guys on the roster. I would be fine if they just sat out the wide receivers in this draft. Now, I would have drafted one last year, like the idiots didn't. But this year, these guys, they all stink. They're all limited in some way, other than the top 2 guys for me, who are JSN and Zay Flowers. I mean, Jordan Addison's fine. Quentin Johnson's fine. Jalen Hyatt is a speed guy. Love Mingo. I love Mingo from Mississippi. He would be a guy that I would like to see. Your guy, Jaden Reed, I watched him. Really like him as well. That's the second, third round. A guy who popped at wide receiver for me, and I made this similar. This is the similar feeling that I had last year when I watched Tariq Woolen at cornerback. And when I say, holy crap, I don't know who that guy is, but I don't care where I draft him, but if I get a chance, I'm taking him. Tyler Scott from Cincinnati. I really liked his film, but what do you think about the overview of the wide receivers and the tight ends and some of my thoughts on the receivers?
That tight end class is awesome. Awesome class. They could come out with 2 tight ends. Whole NFL is looking for tight ends. The whole NFL is thinking the same thing. It's just a question of where they're gonna pick a tight end. I think there's no question they will take a tight end, and you could certainly get a number of good ones up at the top half of the draft. As in the first 3 rounds. And then there's a lot of depth to the position. Wide receiver, it's the college game's evolved so much that, how these guys transition, it's starting to get easier, I think, to project them and how they transfer and become immediately impactful. It's been difficult for the Patriots, but I think across the NFL, he's starting to see that happen more and more. It's just not a great, well-rounded class by any measure. I've been on this from the beginning, Greg. Last year I was talking about Jackson Smith and Jigba. I said in a column, if he was healthy, he could have been a top 5 pick. He is, I think, a perfect scheme fit for the Patriots. I don't care about him running a 4.5. That's plenty fast enough as far as I'm concerned. It's about the pacing, how quick you are. Yeah. And I think he checks enough boxes for the Patriots that's something I would be comfortable with them doing in round 1, because it would make them considerably better next year. Mm-hmm. Other than that, now you're getting into guys that you question if they're going to make the team better next year. And so, if you're going to go high, you got to get a player that's going to impact the team next year. And so I think that should be the calculus when we're evaluating wide receivers. Some of the guys you mentioned there are guys I agree with. There's a couple other ones, but that are interesting, but nothing that if you're looking for a guy that's going to impact the offense next year, I do think it's Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then maybe Zay Flowers, but I think that there's a cap on him to a certain degree, and there'll be a limit on some of the things that he can do.
Oh yeah, a lot of people have talked about Addison, but I watch Addison. I'm like, well, they already have Tyquan Thornton. They're like the same guy, and the Patriots aren't guys that they're not. Normally, they get different types of guys, so that their matchups. I just didn't see anything there. The tight ends. My rankings and quick thoughts on them, and then you can sort of give me what you think. But my number one tight end in this class, and a lot of it depends on his medical. Dalton Kincaid from Utah to me is, he's not quite as big as you would like, but man, the guy gets off the ball, he gets down the field, he's a willing blocker. Like he just does everything well. Maybe not the blocking. I haven't watched a ton of reps at that, but really like Luke Musgrave from Oregon State, coming off a season-ending knee injury. Durability is going to be a concern, but his film is awesome. Sam Laporta from Iowa is, if the Patriots wanted to go back to their, why and move tight end type of thing, I could see the next two guys, Laporta and Darnell Washington from Georgia. Those would be sort of, your type of guys. I'm not a big Michael Mayer guy. I'm just not. He screams ordinary to me, and I'd rather go with, some more traits from some other people. Maybe he's the best solid all-around guy, but I don't know. I wasn't a big fan. Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State reminded me a lot of Gronk on film, a lot of different ways. Schoonmaker from Michigan reminded me of Meyer a lot, in that, he would be more of a Kyle Shanahan system type of guy. And then I didn't even mean to include him, but Josh Wiley from Cincinnati, straight line guy, good after the catch. He's another move tight end, even at 6'6.5". I wasn't overly impressed with him, but I think right about, certainly Kincaid, Musgrave, Laporta, and then Washington for his physical profile, and Kraft for upside. I love the tight end class. I would much rather take two tight ends than one wide receiver in this class.
Great news. Bruins just scored.
There we go.
Up the game. So Greg and I are watching along as we're doing this podcast here. I do like Mayer. I think he's great at the contested catches, has been an impactful player. He doesn't, the way he runs, it doesn't come across like he's that fast. Kind of comes across like lumbering. He had a little bit of, that was a little bit of Gronk, and I don't want to compare anyone to Gronk. I don't think that's fair, but when I would watch him, that's kind of what I would come back to or see. I think he can just be a really solid possession wide receiver that can make those, what they refer to as the combat catches. But the class is just outstanding. Kincaid's more of a move tight end, big wide receiver. I think he's there's a lot of people that are fans of him. He's got that shoulder injury he's coming off of. He's 24. So I had Mayer higher than him. Darnell Washington, I think he can play in the league a long time. I think he can end up being a long pro, just like Mercedes Lewis was, who was drafted years and years ago out of UCLA as a first rounder and was just consistently good. He was underutilized at Georgia, but he needs some work, right? He's a little power up and go. He's not the quickness that you're going to get out of some of these other guys. But then Laporta has been a fan favorite. I've been a huge fan of Laporta. If Laporta had better quarterbacking at the University of Iowa, he would be ranked higher. So Laporta is, I think, underrated. I don't think he'll be underrated by scouts, but I think he's underrated nationally. And then you get into some of the tradey guys. Musgrave's incredibly tradey. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field. He looks the part of an NFL tight end. He moves faster than most tight ends. They all have a lot of traits. They're all good players. There's reasons to like all of them. My top three, if you're thinking first round, would be Mayer. Second round, I would say, Darnell Washington. Third round, I would say Laporta. But there's a number of players that would fit right in and be good players. That's why I think that they come away with at least one tight end in this draft.
Yeah, no question. I would be happy about that. And there's a lot of good ones. And I didn't even really get to the secondary guys, and I'm sure there are guys down there. Let's move over to the defense really quick. Oh, Panthers just scored. Let's talk about cornerbacks, which, we think, even though they don't have a glaring need on their depth chart right now, I mean, with the Jones boys, Jonathan Jones, Jack Jones, Marcus Jones, Jalen Mills is still around, which means, of course, Belichick's not going to take a cornerback in this draft, which is just going to infuriate me because I want him to take one last year. But anyways, I think you and I see things similar. I love Devin Witherspoon is my number one cornerback in this draft. I know he's 5'11". He's not the biggest guy. And Christian Gonzalez looks more the part, and he's bigger, and he makes things look easy. And maybe I haven't watched enough film on him, but I'm sorry. I want a cornerback who just gets after it and is physical and doesn't back down and has some swag. And I see that with Witherspoon. I don't see it as much with Gonzalez. Gonzalez is, I don't know, maybe it's the Oregon thing, maybe it's the Pac-12 thing, but, I always think that those guys are more finesse and they have a chance to bust more in the pros. You have Porter next. I would go Deonte Banks and DJ Turner next. Porter, physical profile and all that, I'm just worried that he's too slow at the end of the day. Certainly the length helps. If you play zone, I think, like Seattle, if you're playing like a cover 3, I think he's more appealing to you, but, certainly a good player. And the other thing on Gonzalez, which is the same thing as Porter, is not a lot of production as far as interceptions and things like that. And to me, that's always a worry. Do you sort of see it the same way? Witherspoon 1, Gonzalez 2?
Yeah, I do. And it's looking like Witherspoon won't be there for them, which is unfortunate. He's been a guy I've been on for some time. He just, he just plays the game the right way, or at least how I see the game the right way. And so I'm not terribly worried about that size. I think he can match up in any scheme. Gonzalez is a little bit more of an athlete at this point, which, with the modern game, that might work for teams. And so, I think that as they project him, I generally actually have trust, and I know that they haven't totally hit on cornerbacks, but I think it's hard to project cornerbacks in the given the way that the college defenses play, and then the scheme changes up at the NFL. I think it's hard to do. So I generally trust them on cornerbacks. The second round is really deep. The first and second round is really deep at cornerback. And if you're going to go get a cornerback, the rounds to get them are really, I think, in the first 2 rounds. Another guy I would call out would be Cam Smith from South Carolina, as well as Brent's the kid from Kansas State, who we previewed last year. He's got a lot of length, tested extremely well at the combine, a lot of play experience. And the kid down in also at South Carolina that was really great at the Senior Bowl, Darius Rush, is another kid that will probably end up landing in the second round. I think DJ Turner is a guy to watch. Macro talked about the speed, adding speed, right? The fastest kid in the combine right there. So another kid to watch. As you start to get to the third round and even maybe the fourth round, I think you should start to watch if the Patriots potentially pick a cornerback and look at moving him to safety. And that's players like Riley Moss, Corey Trice Jr., Tyreek Stevenson from Miami. I love Riley Moss. He would fit right in with what they're trying to do. You want to try him at corner first and then transition him, but I think he's an outstanding athlete that he doesn't get credit for, and has a lot of experience. He was Big Ten defensive back of the year last year, two-time first team All Big Ten. Guy to watch on day 3 is Darrell Luther from South Alabama. I think he also fits the profile of the players that they're looking for. We're going to target a day 3 guy.
Let's wrap up here with a few thoughts about selected guys at like linebacker and also the edge. Of course, this is my running dream that Belichick will actually draft like a linebacker with athletic upside. I'm hoping, and actually I placed a bet at FanDuel a while ago that the first position taken by the Patriots in a trade down that I was projecting would be a linebacker, and the guy I have in mind is Jack Campbell from Iowa, 6'5", 249, tested off the charts. I don't know if he plays that well, but just his whole makeup, I mean, Kevin, don't you think that this guy's like out of central casting for if Belichick's just like, all right, maybe he's not 260 pounds, but man, it just seems like this would be the type of guy who could evolve this defense to the next level.
Yeah, he tested a lot better than I think teams expected he'd test, because that was going to be the knock on him, that he wasn't athletic enough. And then boom, he tests incredibly well. And this is a kid that won the Butkus last year, Defensive Player of the Year, Iowa, incredibly productive. But that length, I mean, you can move him on the outside on certain downs.
Mm-hmm.
You could certainly put him on tight ends and in the red zone, and he wouldn't be outmatched. I mean, he's I think a versatile player is going to fit right in as far as their program wise. Iowa speaks very, very, very highly of him up there. I know from an athletic perspective, one guy you keep hearing in the mocks is Nolan Smith, potentially top 10 player, which is an edge player out of Georgia. I do not see him as an edge player. I just don't think he's had the production. He's 6'2", under 240, good against the run, but 6'2", 240 in the NFL game on the edge, that's a different beast. I do potentially, if they went early first round or even later first round and wanted to go with a real athlete, if you move him off the ball, I think there's a lot of things he could do. Give Gerard Mayo time with him. That would be a really interesting potential move for them. If they went with like the best athlete, I think he makes it, he ran a 4.39, I think, at the 40. I mean, that's adding speed to your middle of your defense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just give Mayo somebody. I mean, he's been here for how long? And yet, Juwan Bentley's fine, but then it's like, Jelani Tavai and a bunch of old guys. Can you give Gerard Mayo like some young stud that he can just teach all his tricks to and be the, and we figure they're going to transition to Mayo at some point in time. Just give him a guy, the pet project. Like, this is your guy to be the quarterback of the defense, once you take over, that type of thing. On the edge, I don't like any of the first round guys for the Patriots. Maybe you have some other thoughts. I did not love Lucas Van Ness's film that I saw against some of the tackles, even though he's not bad. He's fine, and he's more of a Dietrich Wise type anyways than just a dedicated edge. But, Keon White seems to be, an interesting name as far as, in the second round type. I mean, his physical profile is off the charts.
Yeah, and he plays really hard. But he still needs some work. This isn't the bet. Edge is deep. Depends what you're looking for. Are you looking for a 3-4 D end that can play three downs for you? Or are you looking for an outside linebacker? And so I do think that they need edge as a sneaky need for them, given where the age of their outside linebackers. Judon's, I think, going to be 31. Uche's coming up on a contract year. Dietrich Weiss is getting older. So I do think that edge is a sneaky need for them. As far as true fits, it starts to get a little bit harder. I think the guy that I think I mocked for them in our write-ups was Miles Murphy from Clemson. I think he's a solid, really plays the run well. I don't know if he's going to be a 10 sack a year guy, Greg, but I think he can play in the league for 10 years, right? And that's right around the range of you're looking for a guy that, why he's a first rounder in my mind is because he's going to play next year, contribute next year, and be a long-term starter. So I like Murphy. I think his measurables probably match up closer with like a Trayvon Walker, who went number 1 last year. And so this is a guy that's probably getting overlooked a little bit. Two people like Lucas Van Ness, but it's not a totally clean match of what they're looking for. There are some guys that I think could be outside linebackers that you could add depth pieces, replace them and let them match up against the Ronnie Perkins, Anthony Jennings to see who makes the roster next year, or if they could be eventual replacements. I think you can find those guys throughout the day 2, day 3. And as you probably we just scored.
Yeah, Taylor Hall just scored to make it 3-3. So, we will jump off and watch the finish of this game here. But just real quick, I wanted to get your thoughts. If the Patriots stay at 14, if they can't get out, sort of like my pecking order on what I would be happy with. I guess I should move up Christian Gonzalez, but I really don't want to. I don't know. I'm not a big fan. But my pecking order would be as far as guys that I think that have a chance to be on the board. I'm not saying they will be, but my draft chart would be Skoronski, Robinson, the running back out of Texas, who could ultimately be the pick. I could see the Patriots just being like, well, He's the last guy we have rated there, and we're just going to take him, and then we'll see what happens with Ramondre. Could keep both of them, could trade Ramondre. Paris Johnson at tackle, Witherspoon at cornerback, Broderick Jones at tackle, and that's it for me. And then the rest is trade downs, whether it's Lucas Van Ness, Darnell Wright, Christian Gonzalez. Now that I've watched the tackles, I might have to swap Darnell Wright and Broderick Jones. I would probably drop Broderick Jones out of that group now. I don't think I would be happy with him at 14. And then the two receivers, and then Anthony Richardson and Will Levis are guys that I would entertain in a trade down a little bit if they did that.
So I would say Witherspoon, one of the tackles, whether it's and for me, I would put that as Broderick Jones or Johnson. I love the kid Skoronski from Northwestern. They're kind of set at guard in my mind. I know he could play tackle, but as far as the pick there, then I would go to Jackson Smith and Jigba. I just think he could provide so much value to the offense. And then Bijan Robinson. I was going to surprise you with that, and you beat me to the punch, so I give you a ton of credit. He's a guy that if you're sitting in the stands next year, and you think the Patriots have to compete against a much better AFC East, he's a guy that's going to make this team better. I comped him to LaDainian Tomlinson. I don't say that lightly. I think he's the best running back prospect I've seen in some time, and he could be on the field at the same time as Ramondre. So he's a guy that they get there and they're in a pinch. That is not a bad pick, and I am not poo-pooing that running backs in the NFL aren't what they used to be. I
agree with you.
Subscribe to that. One final thing. It's been killing me since we moved off tight ends. Brenton Strange from Penn State. Guy I love, day 3. And as you talked about, wrapped with the quarterbacks, I will give you this quick story. The best guy from an intangibles perspective is the guy that's probably going to go at the top, which is Bryce Young. And I was taught, your readers know that I was at the Tennessee-Alabama game. We previewed the game with Darnell Wright versus Anderson, and then I was at the game and covering it in person. And at the Senior Bowl, I spoke to Bryce. I spoke to Byron Young, who's the DN or outside linebacker for Tennessee. And I said, "Who's the best player you played this year?" And he said, "Bryce Young." No doubt. He said that game, it was so crazy in there. It was so loud. We knew going into the game it was questionable if he was going to play with a shoulder injury. He ended up playing. And so we knew we were going to be hitting him all game long, even if we had to take our shots. And he's like, we were on top of him taking shots. He kept bouncing up, kept delivering throws. And he's like, in the fourth quarter, it was so loud in that stadium that our feet were shaking because the ground underneath us was rattling because the stadium was so loud. Bryce Young's breaking the huddle, walking the line of scrimmage. We're yapping him. I'm trying to look through his soul. And the guy just kept driving them down the field, delivering touchdown, field goal, touchdowns, etc. Took Alabama back to the lead until Tennessee went down the field and scored last because they had the ball last. And I think the point of what he said there is if that's not an NFL quarterback with ice in his veins, I don't know what is. And I thought that was such a great comment. If the kid was 6'3", this wouldn't even be a debate, right? So there's a legitimate question there.
Yep.
I love that story because there's so many of these. How are they gonna handle it in the moment? The things that you talked about that you can't really measure. And I think Bryce Young has all those things.
Yeah, that's a great story and says a lot. And one thing about the Robinson. Look, Skoronski, Paris Johnson, and Devin Witherspoon could all be gone. And if Robinson, and this could be where the Patriots find themselves. Robinson's the only guy with a high grade, a high enough grade at 14, and they pick them and they figure stuff out later. And you can get them in the pass game. You can have them on the field at the same time. I might want to sell high on Ramondre, but that's something that can be done in time. Since he has 2 years left on his contract, he might have some appeal around the league. But, Robinson, it could very well that if the Patriots can't trade out of there, Robinson's there. They're probably hoping somebody wants to come up for Robinson. But if they have to stick and pick it, I could definitely see them taking Robinson. I'm not going to rip it. I don't care if it's a running back. He's that good and gives you enough. You have to be dynamic in the pass game, and he is. to be a first-round running back. Sony Michel was not. He should not have been a first-round running back. But Bijan Robinson is that guy, and he would be worth the 14th overall pick in my mind. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate this, buddy. Get back safe whenever you're coming back. And everybody, make sure you check out FanDuel. You can go over, bet the NFL draft and all that. Make sure you check out FanDuel.com/Boston. And we're excited. Are you excited, Kevin? You excited for the draft tomorrow night?
I know these always go long. It's because we get going. I appreciate they're fun to do, and appreciate all the BSJ members, and go Pats.
Yeah, and we'll probably try to get him on, one of these recap things. And Kevin will be in the comments during the draft with me as we're live blogging it. And, you won't see me commenting a lot on Twitter. You don't during games and on draft. That's because we have BSJ. And I save my thought for the BSJ members. So if you want to know what Bedard thinks about something, join up over at BSJ and give us a subscription. Thanks, buddy. See you when you get back, and probably talk tomorrow night. And thanks, everybody, for listening, and enjoy the draft. And we will be back here with all the analysis you need.